Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're talking about all the hats we've worn over the years. Jobs, volunteer opportunities, hobbies. When you get to midlife, you realize there's quite a list. Join us as we explore the many roles and interests women have over the years. Let's get started. Good morning, Julie and Mindy.
Good morning, Marie.
Hey, Marie. How are you? Hey, Julie.
It's so good to see you guys. But listeners, welcome to you too. You know, Julie and I, we were once in a workshop for women whose kids are going off to college or getting married, kind of entering that empty nest. And the instructor asked us to think of all the different things we've tried or been over the years. And she started pulling out these different craft projects she had done and all these crazy things that she had tried. And it really got us thinking, when you're in midlife, you really forget about all the little jobs you've held or all the little phases you've gone through as far as what you were interested in, all the things you volunteered for. So we just thought it would be fun to look back a little bit today and see the hats we've worn and think about what hats we might like to wear in the future. Mindy, how did you think about this topic? Did you have a long list or did things come pretty easily to your mind?
I do feel like I had kind of a long list of all this various stuff, and it really just depended on where my family was at the time, with how many children, the ages that they were, and what I was interested in. And I noticed that you can probably tell I'm a bit ADHD from the list of things that I have done.
I know. I was thinking, I never think of myself as having a hard problem staying on task, but to look at the list, people would be like, what is she doing?
Yeah. How does that fit together? I'm looking at the variety of things yeah, those are all the same person.
Yeah. And one of the questions that I dread the most and always have dreaded the most ever since I've stayed at home is, what do you do? I just hate that question. I live in fear of someone asking me that question, not because I'm ashamed of my answer, but because I feel like they'll maybe scratch their head and go, huh, is that all you do? Or is that worthy of staying home to do? Or is that even an interesting way to pass your time? I don't know. Do you guys like that question? Does it bother you?
Yeah, it doesn't really bother me. I'm thrilled to be home, and like you, Mindy, I think I found that I'd done a ton of stuff that I've forgotten about. And that's why I'm so excited about this, because I feel like I'm going to learn a lot about you guys from, before I met you.
Right.
Totally agree.
That I don't know about.
So that question definitely used to bother me. But now, especially different places I've lived in the country, there's different social norms with moms. And so some places I've lived, most of the moms stay at home and raise their children. And other places I've lived, most of the moms work full time. Sometimes I'm answering that question as oh yeah, that's what I do too. And other times it's what do you do all day?
Yeah, I guess that question's always been easier because I've been in an environment where moms are doing what I'm doing. So it might be harder if I was around mostly working moms.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I think that's where I dread it the most is if I had to go to my husband's coworker's Christmas party or something.
Yeah.
The people that don't really know you and now you have to answer that question, I draw a complete blank as if I've never done one thing in my entire life.
Well, I have to say this podcast came in handy when I would go to my husband's corporate events and I could tell him I was a podcaster. They were like, oh, that's so cool. I'm like, thank goodness I finally have an answer that's interesting.
I know.
Yeah, that reminds me. I just went to a party Sunday night. There was a lot of people there from way back that I hadn't seen in 10, 15 years. And one of the ladies goes, now something rings a bell, Julie, you're doing something really cool. What are you doing career-wise now? And my son looked at me and just laughed, what are you going to say, Mom? and I kind of just drew a blank and I was like, oh, I'm a podcaster. And he just died laughing.
Julie's like, wait, I do something cool?
Yeah, I know, but it's
what is it?
I've heard about what you're doing. I was like, what has she heard? And then it kind of dawned on me
How did she know?
yeah.
how'd she know I was redoing my guest room?
Yeah. Well, let's start out with our actual JOBSs, the ones we did for money, no matter how long ago. And, if you have known us in real life, you guys may or may not be surprised at some of these jobs that we have actually paid taxes on. But what are some of the places that you've worked over the years? Jobs that you've done for money? Like maybe what was your first job, or jobs that you only held for a short time, or jobs that had to do with your career. We're open to hearing about all of them wherever you want to enlighten us. Julie, do you want to start off?
Sure. Well, if you want to go back to the very first job ever, I had a paper route.
Really?
And yeah, it was even before I could drive. Yeah. It was for this little community newspaper that just came out weekly, but it was a pretty large area, and my dad would drive me around. It was kind of a family effort. Yeah. And, I had to roll them and bag them or rubber band them and then get them out. So he would drive me and I would throw papers. So that was my first paycheck.
Yeah, I forgot about paper routes. My brother had a paper route growing up. I mean, I don't know anyone that has paper routes as far as kids nowadays, but it used to be pretty popular.
Yeah. And then my first real job, other than babysitting, was I worked at a small independent Rexall. Do you remember the little Rexall drugstores, like community drugstores?
Oh, okay.
Independent, not like a Walmart or a Target, but just a tiny little drugstore. And I was just the cashier and actually whatever the guy needed me to do. And back then, you didn't need a technician's license. So I could even go behind the counter and fill prescriptions and help. Like he really let the high school kids do a lot. And I had lived a pretty sheltered life up until that point. And so this was my first exposure to the public. So I came home with really, really good stories every day. And I gained a lot of knowledge from that job because at that time I thought I wanted to be a pharmacist, which I did become. But what I learned from that job was that I never, ever wanted to work in a retail store.
Oh, okay. So you never worked in a retail pharmacy then?
Not after that. No.
Okay.
That public is just crazy.
It was rough. And then I totally forgot about this. And this, I didn't really consider it a job, but I did get paid for it. For 2 or 3 summers, I played in an orchestra for a community theater.
Oh, cool.
And I was a flute player. And we did get paid a small amount. It wasn't like I was a union musician getting paid by the hour, but we got paid a small amount for doing it. And my first year, we did my favorite musical. Do you know it? The Sound of Music.
Okay.
And I really still can't believe this happened because the real Maria von Trapp came to one of our productions.
Oh, my goodness.
And I can't even imagine how many times she's had to sit through that. And
and it's community theater, so it's like...
I just wonder if she even enjoyed it. But she came to our production, and I got to meet her and talk to her. And I remember I had her sign my program, and I still have it. So
that's cool.
That was my brush with greatness.
Yes.
So, and then the only other job I've ever had was I worked as a pharmacist for 10 years at the VA Medical Center in Memphis. And I worked in the medical and surgical ICU. They have their own pharmacy. So I just worked in that little pharmacy and I really loved it. There was a certain pharmacist there who'd kind of been a mentor to me during school. So I knew I wanted to work there. It's the only place I applied. So I got that job and I worked the evening shift, like 3 to 11. So it was really great. My mom would come over to keep the kids. And then John got home around 6. So I didn't feel like I was missing out on a whole lot of time with them. And it was very part-time. I never even worked full-time after I graduated.
Sure.
Because Molly was born a year later. So.
Okay.
But I did that for 10 years. And once we moved to Nashville, I never worked outside the home again. So it was just time to stay home.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
That's quite the list, Julie.
Well, I love how your high school job really played into what you became later and helped you make decisions about where you wanted to work. All right. Well, Mindy, let's start out with your jobs. What was your first job?
Oh my gosh, my list is so long. Okay. So my first job, I did not have to pay taxes on, but I was really good with doing hair. And my friend's mom used to hire me to fix her hair for corporate events with her husband. And I was a teenager. I loved doing hair and I would do girls' hair for dances and proms and stuff like that. And they would pay me. My first official job is I really thought that I wanted to be an educator. So I went and got a job as a daycare worker, thinking that was around the same thing.
Around the same thing.
I hated every minute of it. And from there, I decided I didn't want to have anything to do with any kids at all. And I became a bank teller.
Oh, now that seems like the complete opposite.
So I absolutely loved being a bank teller. I decided after working with, snotty kids, literally snotty, I really enjoyed working in a more professional environment. So I became a bank customer service representative. And ironically, let's see, I just found out I was pregnant with Abby and they were going to make me a branch manager. Whoa. So I was actually doing pretty well. And I was like, not interested. I'm going to stay home with this kid. I have also been a teacher's aide.
Okay.
Throughout the kids growing up, I would work at their preschool, like just to be kind of around where they were or to somehow get a discount because I had so many children.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And so if I did anything outside of the home, it was around wherever they were at. And so when they got older, they were all in school. It was so fun because I started working at our church in Knoxville as a welcome center host. And it was the perfect job for me because I could basically help people navigate the church, connect them with a life group, connect them with, a ministry or anybody that came in. They got to see me first. And I just absolutely love helping new people. I mean, I feel like I've always been new. It was the perfect job. And so that was really sweet. And then through my exercise journey and my weight loss journey, I became the exercise and wellness coordinator at that church. And then I got certified to teach classes, exercise classes, and personal train. So those were a lot of fun. Each of those jobs was a part of my personality.
Yeah.
Well, and it sounds like jobs can teach us what we don't want to do. It's a good thing you didn't go to school to become a teacher and not know that you were going to hate it.
Well, it's funny that happened. And then I ended up later on having 4 children of my own, because at that time I would have been like, I'm not ever having kids. Turns out there's a difference between your own kids and,
and other people
doing it as a job. Yes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you have switched and turned and adapted to wherever you've been, but you've had enjoyable experiences. Some of them.
For the most part. Yeah. For the most part.
Yeah.
What about you, Marie?
Well, my first job was a cashier at a local grocery store when I was 15. And at that time, the local grocery store in a small town really kind of was a gathering place. Like, that's where the video counter was. So if anyone was going to get entertainment or have anything to watch on the weekends, you'd go over to the video section. So, people would come in for that, or to get takeout. There wasn't Subway. You went to the local grocery store and ordered your subs and pizza and picked them up for that night. I think at that time we maybe only had like just a couple local restaurants and no chains. It was the place where you got to see all the local families and what they bought. It was the place that people came in to buy their supplies for the weekend parties. I mean, it was the place that you really interacted. And like you, Julie, when you said you learned a lot about being around the public, so did I. And it really was a good experience. I did work there even in college. The first summer I went home, I didn't want to be a cashier anymore, so I moved over to work in the produce and for a short time in the meat department, which is freezing. You are like in a cold refrigerator all day long. I think I maybe started in the meat department that summer and then said, I can't do it. It's just too cold. And so I moved over to produce.
Right.
But probably the most unlikely job I had at that time, kind of those teenage college years, was, can you guys believe I was a camp counselor for a whole summer?
What? No.
Like a sleepover camp, like one where you get dropped off and you spend the whole summer. You get the one day off a week, And I think I've mentioned on this podcast before that I do not like camping. And this was living in a cabin with no air conditioning, no heat, no nothing. It was just an outdoor cabin. And I was in charge of a group of, I don't even remember what age, myself and another college girl. But I wanted to work at this camp because I was really interested in working with the hearing impaired. And I had heard, because of course there was no internet, you really couldn't look much up, but I had heard that this camp got some hearing impaired campers. So I thought, well, I'll apply. I don't know that they even had any hearing impaired campers. Like, I don't really remember even one camper from my experience. They put me in charge of teaching fishing, which seems
my word.
Really weird. I never fished outside of that summer. I had to show kids how to put the worm on the hook, and I don't even know what my lesson plans were. So I was in charge of fishing activity, if you can believe it, you know. But what I do remember about that summer was the other counselors. It was so fun. It was like a summer that I've never experienced again, where all these people, I didn't know a soul. I don't think anyone knew each other. And since you're there the whole summer and you're only allowed off the one day a week, you just spend all your time together. And so that was a really fun time. I remember I only made $500 the entire summer. So I couldn't go back the summers after that. It was just like, I can't go through my whole next year of college on $500. But it was great for one summer, and I had a really fun time.
Wow. Julie, did you know this about Marie?
I did not. I think I might have known about the camp experience, but not the fishing part.
The fishing guide. Wow.
And then I've held a variety of speech therapy jobs. So I did want to work with the hearing impaired. So again, no internet. And you pretty much at that time chose things based on what other people told you. And people heard me say that and they said, you should become a speech pathologist. So unlike you, Mindy, I did not get any shadowing or experiences. I just signed up for speech pathology and made it my major. Okay. It was a couple years into classes before my professors were like, well, we really don't work with the hearing impaired that often, you know, because it's kind of just a real subspecialty. So I thought, well, I'm already into this program. I've got to finish now.
Oh, my goodness.
So I even went on and got my master's. And then my first job was at the Maryland School for the Deaf, my first job after graduation. And I really, really loved it. But I was also pregnant at the time. And I stopped halfway through the year to stay home with my daughter. So that was my one and only experience working with the hearing impaired. After that, we didn't live in Maryland anymore. And the different speech jobs that I held over the years were like in-home therapy, private practice therapy, or hospital therapy, rehab therapy. I had gotten into that field because of a misconception on my part. So yes, I could earn good money and I could do the work, but it never was a passion for me.
And so since then, you've just had to deal with kids with selective hearing.
Right.
Oh, that's a good way to put that.
I know. So about 10 years ago, when my husband started traveling a lot for work, it just seemed like a good time to quit all part-time speech work. I stopped working part-time and because I really felt like someone needed to be on call 24/7. So those are my paid jobs. Those are the jobs that I have had out there. I think one thing that we can, maybe if you're a younger listener, actually go and those shadow days are not just a joke put out there by your high school. They can actually be valuable.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, what I want to know is when are the three of us going fishing?
Oh my gosh. I think we hear our hobbies first and then we go off of that, Julie.
Okay.
I can safely say that I have not fished even one time since then. Now that we know about the jobs that we've gotten paid for, let's talk about the things that we have not gotten paid for, that we actually volunteered for. And some of these we probably look back and think, what was I thinking? All right, Mindy, why don't you start us off this time? What have you volunteered for in your adult life?
Oh, my goodness. Well, more when the kids were little before I learned to say no.
Okay.
But honestly, my first remembrance of enjoyable volunteer experience was with the MOPS organization. Mothers of Preschoolers. It really served just such a valuable place in my life when I had Abby and then Grant. And so the first thing is I volunteered to write the newsletter for our little group, which I loved. And then the next year I was a MOPS coordinator, which I absolutely loved also. And so that was really sweet. And I even I stayed with the MOPS organization actually quite a bit, and even traveled to Texas for a major convention and all this fun stuff. And I'm like, well, this just isn't going to last for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I finally had to kind of let that go, especially as my kids weren't preschoolers anymore.
Right, right.
But goodness, over the years of my kids being young, I volunteered for all kinds of things. I mean, any type of church role you can possibly imagine, whether it be with women's ministry, children's preschool, VBS, every VBS for every summer that my kids were in it. Youth worker, help in the office, help folding bulletins back when church did bulletins. There were so many different things. And then later on, when my kids were older, the one volunteer job I think that was more like a part-time job was I was a BSF leader. And that is a Bible study fellowship. And it goes through the school year. And basically it's a national organization that you study one book of the Bible or one topic per school year. And internationally, everyone's doing the same study together. It's a very in-depth Bible study, which I did love. But being a leader was very intensive.
Mm-hmm.
That was really a time that the Lord was teaching me a lot in my life. But yes, I'm not really doing a whole lot of volunteering right now, though. I think I've learned how to say no.
I feel like the volunteers, maybe you volunteer the most like in the first 10 years of being a mom, and then you're like, I'm going to phase back.
I'm kind of tired now.
Has that been your experience, Julie?
Well, when I was thinking back on all the stuff I'd done, I started to notice a common denominator, and it was that almost everything that I volunteered for involved teaching somehow.
Okay.
But I never, ever wanted to be a teacher in a formal setting, you know, like in front of a classroom. Right. But I do enjoy teaching kind of in non-traditional ways. And I think this might have been where it kind of started when I can't remember if I was in high school or maybe just starting college. I volunteered with a literacy program called Each One, Teach One. Mm-hmm. And they paired you up with a non-reader. And I got paired up with an underprivileged older woman. I think she was at least 70.
Oh, wow.
In my 20-year-old mind, she was 70.
She was probably 40.
I know, right?
Well, she lived totally alone. I think she was older.
Okay.
And when I read her bio, because I got to pick my student, she solely wanted to learn to read because she wanted to read her Bible.
Oh.
And I think I did that for about 1 year. And it was really an eye-opening experience because it was just so hard to comprehend that in 1980s, there was an adult that did not know how to read.
Yeah.
And she did not know how to read one word.
That's amazing.
And so it was super challenging. I mean, it was, I'll admit it was frustrating at times because she just had a really hard time with it, I think because of her age. And part of the agreement was that I would go to her. So I had to drive like into the inner city because she didn't have any personal transportation. She lived in a high-rise public housing building in Memphis. And for me as a young girl, 18, 19, that was a little out of my comfort zone. And, you know, just seeing some hard situations that I'd never seen before and just feeling a little bit out of place.
Yes.
So that was kind of my first experience. And that really had an impact on me. And this is something that I'm doing now as I currently teach ESL at our church. And I thought, well, this might have a similarity. And I've done that for 2 years now. We're on hold right now because of COVID, but I hope to get back to that soon. And another teaching role that I've had besides homeschooling, I homeschooled for 15 years, was that I was a teacher of high school girls on Sunday mornings at our church. And Mindy and I did that together for a little while.
Yes.
And one of the things that came with that role was that I often went as a counselor to summer camp. And so one job, this is kind of a funny story, one job that I was probably the least qualified for was when I was asked to go to camp as the camp nurse. Okay, I am not a nurse.
But you're married to a doctor. Doesn't it rub off on you?
Exactly.
I'm married to a doctor and a pharmacist, so sure, that'll cover it. Well,
Right.
Another mom was going to be there as the nurse for part of the week. So I was only going to have to be there by myself, like the latter part of the week. And I was reassured over and over again that nothing ever bad happens at camp other than she said, oh, it's always bug bites, sunburns, and scraped knees. And I thought, well, any mom can put a Band-Aid and rub aloe on, right? Or,
Right.
And as a pharmacist, I was going to be in charge of kind of keeping track of the kids' meds, like just giving them out, when they need them. So I thought, okay, I can do that. Well, this year, okay, keep in mind, this camp is very remote. The kids arrive by bus, and then they are ferried across a lake to the camp. It's only, you can only arrive by boat. There is no telephone service, no cell service. There's just one phone on the wall in the kitchen.
Oh, wow.
Very remote. Okay. First or second night, one of the counselors gets bitten by a scorpion in her bed.
Oh my goodness.
They have scorpions in Tennessee?
Now we do, yes.
Oh my goodness.
So she brings it in a little jar, to the dining hall.
My
so we
goodness.
keep this scorpion in the dining hall all week. Then we ended up having 2 poisonous snake bites, copperhead, in the lake where the kids are swimming. And they kept swimming all week long.
Oh my goodness. I'm picturing you like on Little House of Prairie where they lance the bite and suck it out with your mouth.
Ew.
Like I'm just picturing you, Julie.
Spit out the poison.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny because before camp started, I did take a little first aid course, like reading up, and I did check up on snake bites, and I did read that that's not what you do.
Okay.
Oh, okay. That's good.
I did know that much. And then we had 2 faintings. And then last but not least, our youth pastor's wife was pregnant. She was known to have night terrors, and she was sleeping on a top bunk. And in her sleep in the middle of the night, she fell off her bunk. I think she was in the cabin next to me, and somebody came knocking on my door. Miss Julie, you've got to come over here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go over there, and she is laying in the floor, and her arm is not even shaped like an arm anymore.
Oh my goodness, Julie.
Her forearm is like over where her elbow is. Like it is dislocated and broken in multiple places. And she is just moaning in pain. Like she's almost out of it,
Like in shock or something.
Yes. So we have to wake up the camp, the staff. We have to send someone to call 911. Then we have to arrange where the ambulance can get her.
Right. On a boat? Like, do they have ambulance and boats?
We have to wake up the boat driver at the camp. He gets the boat ready. We have to put her in a car, drive her down to the boat dock. This is all at like 2 a.m. And they have to ferry her across to the main road. And the ambulance met her on the highway.
Oh, my goodness.
And got her and took her to the hospital. So I stayed behind because the girls were really upset. Because she was pregnant, they were really worried about her baby.
Sure.
So we formed a circle and just prayed for Rachel. Well, during the prayer, the girls start dropping like flies. That's when we had our faintings.
Oh,
And
my gosh.
We thought one girl had a seizure because her eyes kind of rolled back. And she said, Miss Julie, this has never happened to me. I think I might have had a seizure.
Horrible.
So we have to call the boat driver back. And we're like, we've got another one. So we send this girl to the same hospital, and they end up in the ER right next to each other. And the ER doctors are like, wait, you guys are from the same camp?
Oh,
gosh.
So
who is the incompetent nurse over there?
Oh, I remember.
Well, luckily they do have a camp nurse that lives on site. And when the broken arm thing came, she was called. I mean, there was really nothing anybody could do for that,
Right.
When everyone got off the bus at the church, I remember picking up my kids, and everyone was just like, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about it. I'm like, this is so unusual for kids getting back from camp.
It was a really rough week. And I thought, okay, note to self, never be talked into anything that you don't feel qualified for. And just because nothing has ever bad has happened before doesn't mean it's not possible.
Oh my goodness.
Kidding. Wow, Julie.
Well, that is quite the story. And I can safely say that you've probably never volunteered as a nurse again.
No, I'm not a nurse.
Well, I had to chuckle when you said that you notice a common denominator, that you find that you volunteer for teaching positions and you really think you kind of like teaching. I find that I either volunteer or get roped into teaching positions, but every single time I'm like, I hate teaching. I am not a teacher.
Right.
But doesn't it seem like a lot of volunteer opportunities have to do with teaching?
Yes.
My very first volunteer position when Steve and I got married was, I don't know, I think if you're young and you don't have kids, they assume you'll be great working with the youth.
Yeah.
But I'm just not that great working with the youth. I think Steve was fine with it, but I just, I don't know. So youth worker. And then I also was a MOPS coordinator as time went on, Mindy, and I actually really did enjoy that because that's not teaching. That is organizing, delegating, kind of being in charge of something. I don't mind doing that at all. That was actually fun. Another volunteer positions that I always like, and my first one probably was through MOPS, was just being a small group leader. I love leading like a discussion or being in charge of a Bible study or like being like an adult type facilitator. Yes. I totally don't mind that at all. But probably one of my most fun volunteer opportunities, other than the MOPS, was one that Julie reminded me of that I had completely forgot about, was being my church librarian. I actually loved being in charge of ordering the books, recommending books to people. People would come in, again, pre-internet. Oh, what book do you recommend, Marie? Let me show you the books that I'm enjoying, and running like a book club. Like, I just love that kind of thing. To me, that's not even volunteering. That's just getting to do something that I enjoy.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds right up your alley.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, now we've come to the part of the program that I think we've all enjoyed over the years. And I just can't wait to find out what hobbies you guys have had, because I am a hobby person. And I was thinking that this can be actual crafts or things that you've tried, like making your own bread or gardening. Like, what phases have you gone through? All right, Julie, you are like the quintessential hobbyist.
Yes.
So maybe
she is.
It'll be like, what's that game where, is it Boggle, where you name all your hobbies and we'll cross off if we've had that same hobby, because then we won't talk about it.
It's like categories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when you said make your own bread, I thought I have pretty much tried to make my own whatever, fill in the blank. And my friends tease me about it. My friends from way back. So if you know me now, you might not think that about me, but I just always love learning to do something new. And I think I was probably inspired by a friend that I met in pharmacy school. And she was like the pioneer woman of all things crafty. And I don't mean like make and reset of toilet paper rolls. I mean artisan craft. Like she had large weaving looms in her home. She did basket weaving. She did smocking. And so I was just fascinated that somebody that young, in her 20s already had all these skills. So I wanted to be her. And so she was willing to teach me all of this stuff. So I never did get into the hand weaving until recently. I bought a loom, and I know, Marie, I've talked to you a lot about it, that's been a goal of mine. That's just been hard to get back into or to get into, but I did buy a small lap loom, and I've woven a scarf and a wall hanging for my daughter. But that's where that inspiration came from, was my friend in pharmacy school. And I kind of laugh and I think, what were we doing in pharmacy school? Like, why weren't we in some kind of craft school, not pharmacy school?
Yeah.
Because my last year of pharmacy school, that's when I got into basket weaving. I mean, seriously, that's all I did during my spare time.
That sounds so funny.
Yeah, we got to live in Washington, D.C. for like 2 months with John's work. He went to Walter Reed for 2 months. And so I got to go because in pharmacy school, you get 3 months off like anytime you want it, not just summer. You get to pick your months. So I picked the months that he would be there so I could go with him. And this was back when I was afraid of traveling, and John was at work all day. So I was in this apartment all day by myself, wouldn't even go out the door. I think we had a homeless man sleeping on our front doorstep. So I was terrified to go anywhere. So I ordered all these basket supplies and wove baskets for 3 months. my whole time.
My goodness.
You could have set up a shop in the street, the downtown market.
I know. Put a homeless guy to work selling your wares.
So this year during quarantine, I revived the basket weaving and I started weaving Ezra a little egg basket for Easter. So it won't be ready until Easter 2021, but I did I did revive that. And I started thinking I really liked these hobbies because of my connection with my friend. And it was something we could do together. And I just really loved the end result, like having something beautiful and handmade at the end. I think I also said that she smocked. So I started smocking all my kids' clothes. I first actually learned to smock from a lady at our church. She had like a little smocking group. And we would get together then, like all the mom in Memphis, that was a very popular thing to have your children dressed in smocked clothes. And so the moms, we would get together and have play dates, let our kids play, and we would smock or just share patterns or, like what we were working on, help each other out, that kind of thing. That was fun. So there was a lot of social things involved with the crafting,
Sure.
Recently, I picked up macrame. I first learned that from my grandmother. I remember she used to make plant hangers, like way back in the 70s. And now that's so popular. So I've made a couple of wall hangings, plant holders with Molly. I've made some Christmas ornaments during quarantine. So it's about time to dig those out.
Yeah.
Wow.
And let's see. Recently, I've gotten into watercolor painting, mostly just dabbling in it by watching YouTube videos. Let's see. This year, I did sell some paintings, which was kind of fun. And one of the main motivators for that has been needing art on my walls.
Okay.
Like I redid a bedroom and I wanted some botanicals and they were very expensive. So I thought I can do this. So I just started painting fern fronds and flowers and stuff. And then I wanted some pet portraits of my pets. So I tried that. And then I wanted some Chinese ginger jars for my guest room makeover. So I did that. So it's a really cheap way to get some art on your walls.
Sure.
That's true.
Definitely.
If you can pull it off, which you can pull that stuff off. Mine does not look good.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I've thrown away a lot too. So.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But the hobby that I did for probably the longest that I really enjoyed it, but totally gave up because I don't like it anymore is decorating the cookies with royal icing.
Oh, you gave that up, Julie?
Really? I have. Yeah. I started off just kind of making our own Christmas cookies for fun. And then I got asked to make some for a graduation party, an engagement party, a wedding rehearsal dinner. And so it was kind of fun. I thought, oh, maybe I could turn this into a business. I remember the most challenging one I ever did was for a friend who wanted some gift cookies for her son's rehearsal dinner. So I only think she needed 24, but she showed me what she wanted and it was extremely elaborate and I couldn't find a cookie cutter to match it. So I Googled making your own cookie cutter. And you can buy metal flashing at Home Depot and bend it and connect it and make your own cookie cutter. So I just drew out the little shape and then made the metal fit it. So it took me literally weeks to perfect this cookie before I would even agree to make it for her. I had to see if I could do it. That was probably the cookie that I'm most proud of. I'll have to put a picture of it. She loved them. But after that, it was just like, oh, that is really, really stressful. Like I have a lot of pressure on myself. Like when you're charging money for something, you just feel like they have to be perfect.
Right.
And eventually the stress of deadlines and the whole perfection, because these people are paying big bucks for it, it took a little bit of joy out of it.
Sure.
Okay.
That's something I've totally walked away from.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. Julie, like I love hearing these things about you and you've completely opened my mind of the things that I have never ever thought to Google. How to make your own cookie cutter. That thought would have never crossed my mind in a million years. I'm so impressed.
Well, I thought somebody's got to make them.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, what hobbies have you done, Mindy?
Oh my goodness. Aside from doing people's hair, which I have continued to love to do, and like even for all of Abby's dances and things like that when she was at home, her friends started coming over and getting ready with us so I could do their hair.
Yeah.
But I think some of the things, and I do enjoy that, but the things that I have consistently grown in and loved and will continue to do, one of the main things is just landscape design, installation, redoing all of the yards that we move into. I really found that I have a knack, and a better eye for my yard than I do for my inside of my house sometimes.
Yeah.
And so that's something that Bryce and I have found we love to do. But like, there's just nothing more sweet than a day spent with my hands in the dirt, redoing some design and putting my design together for the yard. And Bryce and I have joked that we always seem to move when the yard gets finished.
Right.
When it's in full bloom.
and it's just, we plant things for every season, trees, shrubs, flowers. You know, there are perennial flowers that I love. And then there's the annuals that I would add every summer. Even now that we're back in Knoxville, I'm heartbroken to go past our old house because we had fully done it. It was gorgeous. And the people don't care about the yard one bit. I'm like, you have let my yellow roses go. Like, you're breaking my heart.
Can I just come by this weekend and trim those yellow roses?
I know. I'm like, can I prune those? Like, my screensaver on my phone is my yellow rose from my yard. Like, that's one of my roses. That's really sad. But goodness, I also love, one of the other things that I can pinpoint that I absolutely love and happen to be pretty good at is being a party planner and being the hostess with the mostest. I love arranging gatherings of people. I'm not going to be the best cook. I'm not going to necessarily be the best decorator even, but I can figure out flow and seating and movement of where people need to be. And I also always plan fun games. And so anytime people come over, there is an activity appropriate to the type of party that I'm planning. And so I love doing that kind of thing. And then if it can involve being outside, you know, adding in good food that I don't necessarily have to cook, I'm like, that's it 100%. I enjoy arranging all of the homes that we move into. You know, I've talked about all the moving, so I'm constantly decorating. But if I'm in a rental, I'm definitely going to be outside just working on potted plants, things that I can take with me when we go to a more permanent place.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. And I never really thought about gardening. I mean, I knew gardening was a hobby for people, but after we had our gardening episode last year, I can really see the joy that you would get working, because I've received a lot of joy just working in the things that I've planted since then.
Yes. Yeah. It grows too over time. Like we go past houses, our house in Nashville, we'll drive past and we look at because we redid that whole yard and the trees that we planted, and we go to see our babies to see how big they've grown. I was going to say,
it's like taking care of your babies. Yeah. It really is. Yeah. I was thinking about hobbies for myself, and I don't remember if I had a lot of hobbies. I know my aunt taught me to cross stitch when I was pretty young. So I had that as a hobby, on and off. And then my grandmother she would come for 2 weeks every summer, and she would always get me started on a knitting project, because she always, and if I had lived closer to her, I'm sure that I would have become a much better knitter. But you know how when you only do something 2 weeks a year, then she goes home to California and you get lost on a stitch. It's like, well, I'll put that project aside till next year.
But you did your blanket last year.
Yes, knitting did come back around for me. So, you know, I did always enjoy crafts as a young person. And then after I had Abigail, I mean, I know I'm not like this now, but I really wanted to be like, I don't know if I wanted to be, or if I just was very interested in being like how they would describe them now as like one of those crunchy moms, you know, like do cloth diapers, make your own bread, you know, look at like this meat substitute, like different diet type, you know, like just all this own like very from scratch type, I don't know. Dry your clothes on the clothesline outside because you're trying to save electricity. Like whatever. It was like not at all like I am right now. But at that time, I was just very interested in that kind of a lifestyle. And that kind of a lifestyle really lends itself to crafts. So, you know, and to like doing things in your home and just homemaking, I guess, in general. So my bent is always to be attracted to that kind of work. But I've done, like I said before, cross-stitching, needlepoint, bread making, oil painting, watercolors, knitting, scrapbooking. I used to put my girls down for a nap and scrapbook. I mean, what was I even thinking? And then I also, if I'm interested in something, I'll often want to try it. So I did blogging for a while. I'm doing podcasting right now because I'm interested in podcasting. But one thing that I noticed about myself, and and hobbies is most of the time I'm interested in learning, but if I achieve a level of competence, I can take it or leave it after that.
Right.
I don't need to keep doing that hobby forever once I know how to do it. It's like I want to move on and learn how to do something else.
That's a good point. I think that's why I dabble in so many things.
Right.
Never master any of
Yeah, it's not that I need to be the best at it, but once I know how someone would do that or how they do it, I feel like, well, now let me learn how somebody does something else.
Yeah.
Right. Julie, I do wonder how long she's going to keep us around for this podcast.
Yes. If you looked at my interests in a graph, it's like, I'm so interested in it. It's a rise and peak. And then it's like, I'm not interested in that anymore. And it's a
I'm done.
hard and fast drop off.
Right.
And people just get a phone call one day. And
people that see me years later, like, do you still do X? I'm like, no, I don't do X anymore.
Yeah. And I'm completely fine with it.
Yeah. But I do get a great sense of satisfaction from creating anything. Just like you said, Julie, working with your hands, or what you said, Mindy, stepping back and seeing what you created. I love that feeling. I can't imagine living in a body that didn't enjoy that feeling, but I know there are people that could care less about that feeling.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyways, well, let's wrap up because we're getting close on time. But what are some things that you guys would like to try in the future? Doesn't have to be anything like too specific, but is there a hobby or a job or a volunteer opportunity that you'd like to try in the next couple of years?
This has to do with gardening. My dad always had a rose garden, and he grew like the hybrid tea roses, the long stem cutting roses that smell heavenly. And I watched him, learned how to plant them and care for them. And I tried a rose garden myself when I had babies. And it was beautiful, but it was like having a pet or even another child. Like it's very time consuming. Right. So I want to go back to that at some point. I don't know that I'm ready to right now, but I do want to get back to that because they're just so beautiful. And it's really a skill, it takes a lot of work, but the reward is really great. And then lastly, I've just toyed with doing something concerning travel because I love travel, but I'd like to combine it into some kind of a small business, not anything huge, but maybe just to offset my travel expenses. So I'm kind of toying with that.
Yeah. Those are two interests that I can see you being passionate about, both of those. Mindy, do you have anything that you're kind of toying with?
Bryce and I have been dreaming, and we would both love to be able to build our own home and own some land and really cultivate the land and do the house. We've lived in so many different places that Bryce has actually got plans together that we have talked through over the past couple of years, designing a home. And I would love to be able to build a house in a place on some land and cultivate that well, but also to be able to travel and then to use our home for just creative family events. And so I do love creating events for people, and that comes with like the party planning. And so who knows, maybe we'll have a wedding venue or something like that.
That would be fun.
Like there's not a wedding venue in every barn in Tennessee right now.
Right.
But there'll be something new on the horizon and you might be able to plug into it.
It does interest me. And Bryce and I, again, with the land, the house, events, things like that. It all just the thing that we love.
Right. Well, I feel like something that I've loved for years and years, I have such a passion about, but I've never done it. I love books. I absolutely adore books. And I would love to work in a library. I get peace when I walk into a library. Like to me, it is just a overwhelming sense of well-being to walk into a library. And it's been like that since I was a child. So I love libraries, and yet I've never worked in one. And I've heard that the Brentwood Library is hard to get a position at. But maybe when my kids are gone, I might be able to work at the Brentwood Library. That is one of my thoughts.
You can volunteer at the Brentwood Library.
Yes, I could volunteer.
Get your foot in the door. That is
And the
best
Brentwood Library is so beautiful.
It is so beautiful. That is such a peaceful place to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, libraries appeal to me. So I think, well, if I had to have a job for fun, I think a library would be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
But this was great. I loved learning, where you guys have been in life, what you've been interested in. Listeners, we hope you've enjoyed it too. I'm sure that as we all look back, if we are in midlife, there are a lot of things that we've done that we don't think about every day, but bring back fond memories, or maybe we're even glad we moved out of that stage. Come and follow us on Instagram this week, and we'll try to post some pictures. And Julie will post some pictures of her projects. Maybe she can find a picture of being a paper girl. I don't know. But we are always trying to connect with listeners on Instagram. Come and follow us at Midlife Matters Podcast, or email us your experiences with different jobs that you've had over the years, or different volunteering or hobbies. You can email us at midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com. But now it's time to move into I'm a Fan. Besides all of your hobbies, Julie, what are you a fan of this week?
Okay, this week I am a fan of something called Hatch chili peppers. Have you ever heard of them?
Oh, wow.
Okay, if you get a chance to go to eat at Taqueria del Sol, which I know Nashville and Atlanta has them. I'm not sure about Knoxville.
Okay.
You should run there because they are serving something called Hatch chili peppers, and they're only in season in August and September.
Oh, interesting.
And we were there a couple of Sundays ago, and the owner, who's always there, who's very friendly, came up and talked to my husband about what he was wearing.
Oh.
Like they started exchanging, like, where did you get that blazer? And it's funny.
Of course they did.
Yeah, of course they did. And so we had already ordered and we're eating. And the owner says, did you not order the Hatch chili peppers? We already had our food, but he brought us all a Hatch chili pepper for free.
Neat.
To try. And he said, they're only in season the next month. So you need to get them while they last. And it was just so delicious. So 2 days ago, I was at Trader Joe's and they had a large bag of Hatch chili peppers. And they're called that because they're grown in Hatch, New Mexico.
Okay.
And I roasted them, peeled them, and then stuffed them. And you put cheese on them and then put them under the broiler for like 5 minutes. I'm telling you, it's probably the best thing I've ever cooked ever.
Really?
They were so good.
Okay.
And a lot of the recipes I looked up, you had to cook like saute onion and all this stuff. So I just bought a jar of the cowboy salsa from Trader Joe's, which is corn, black beans, onions, and tomatoes.
Yum. Mm-hmm.
And that's what I put in there and then just topped it with cheese. So it took hardly any time. They are so good.
Oh, I'll have to look for those. That sounds
so
delicious.
Yeah, they're not around long. So
yes. Interesting. Wow. Mindy, what are you a fan of this week?
I've been a fan before of Old Navy workout leggings, but I have a specific one that I'm a huge fan of. These are the high-waisted Elevate Power Soft 7/8 length side pocket leggings.
What a name.
Like
we have to put a link to those.
Know, right? I will put a link. And
very descriptive.
I know they are awesome. First of all, the Power Soft. These are nicer to me. I have bought Athleta leggings. I've bought Fabletics. I've tried all kinds. The price is so great at Old Navy. I ended up buying 4 pairs of these through quarantine. I got 2 of the black and 2 of the charcoal snake. Which the charcoal snake, I'll send you a link for those because they literally are flattering on every body type.
Oh, okay.
What I love about them is they're high-waisted. They stay in place. They're very soft. So not only do they stay in place, but they just feel super soft, like non-restrictive. And then there's the side pocket on the leg. So when I go walking and I have my wireless earbuds in, I stick my phone in the pocket of the pants and I'm hands-free. It is the most lovely walk.
Oh,
it doesn't get in the way. Like these leggings, I have a hard time not wearing them every day. Okay. I love them so much.
Well, that's a great recommendation.
Well, we will definitely put a link to those in the show notes. And we're coming up on the fall, so a new pair of leggings would always be great.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm a fan of something that we watched on Netflix this week. It's called Stateless. Have you guys seen it advertised? It's a Netflix original, which I usually like those. And it is about 4 strangers in an immigration detention center in the Australian desert. But it is really good. You know, we hear a lot about the refugee crisis, but this kind of puts faces, and it is based on a true story. This kind of puts faces in real life people with the problem. And it's only 6 episodes. And I mean, every time we'd get to the end of one, we'd be like, oh, let's press play on the next one. Like, it was really good. I thought it was excellent. I would love to hear from some other people that have seen it, because the ending is a little surprising. And it's like one of those things that you want to talk about with people. So if you're just looking for a good series, you and your husband want to sit down, or if you have older kids, I thought Stateless on Netflix was awesome.
Good recommendation.
Yeah, and it's not a documentary. It's actually a drama. But it's based on a true story. So it is a story. So, all right. Well, I love talking with you guys, and I had so much fun learning about you.
Me too. That was quite interesting.
Yes. All right. Well, I look forward to talking to you next week.
Sounds great. Bye.
Okay, bye. We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.